Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming to my first webinar, Fed Time 101, How to Reduce Your Time, Get Ready for Prison Camp, and Keep Your Sanity. So in this webinar, I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm going to give you some ideas on how to prepare for prison. And then I'm going to tell you what to expect when you go to prison. And I'm going to tell you what it's like entering prison camp. From there, I'm going to give you an idea on how to create a prison routine. I'll give you some more things to expect your first week. And then I'm going to give you an idea on how to reduce your time to get out of prison as soon as possible. Lastly, at the end of this, I'll give you a chance to get a 1-hour consultation at a reduced price to help you get through your prison camp experience. Now, my name is Pyerse. I am the author of Subprime Felon Inside Federal Prison Camp. I was convicted in 2011 for bank fraud. I had owned 5 homes with the help of faulty subprime loans. Basically, I got some houses I couldn't afford. And they went into foreclosure, and we lied about the documents and the information that was on those documents. I served 17 months at Herlong Federal Prison Camp, and that sentence was reduced from what was originally 27 months. I'll explain more on that later. Now, when you go to prison for the first time, you're going to get sent to certain levels, and where you go in prison is going to be based upon the security level that the government feels you need. That security level is based upon the crime that you committed and your prior convictions. Now, the type of security levels that you have are residential, most commonly known as the halfway house. And then you have the minimum security prison, also known as camp, which is where I went. Low is slightly more violent and they require more security there. And once you start getting to the medium and the high, those are for people who are going to be in prison for longer periods of time, who've had maybe several priors beforehand. And I will not be able to help you with medium or high because I've never been to either one of those. And truthfully, I've never been to a low either, but there may be some information that I could give you. Now, as far as your point system goes, your points are going to be based upon your prior convictions and the crime that you currently commit or being convicted for. Now, if you had less than 11 points, you're going to go to the camp. Between 12 and 14 points, you would go to a low. 15 to 20, you're going to a medium. And anything more than 21, you're going to a high. Normally, most people who never committed a felony and this is your first time offending, you're usually going to a camp because you don't have enough points. Again, if you committed a serious crime, you may get more points. I had no priors. This was my first conviction, knock on wood, my last conviction. So I had 1 point, which is why I was sent to a camp. Now, in preparing for prison camp, you're going to have, if you are a self-surrender, you will have between 6 and 8 weeks to turn yourself in. What you want to do during that time period is get your money ready for your books. Money in your books is basically what will allow you to get commissary items. It will allow you to pay any fees in prison, And if you need to get any sort of books from Amazon or any sort of book catalog, you will be able to get that through your books. And the only way to purchase these things is through the books you have at prison camp. So you want to put some money aside in case you don't want to work very hard at prison camp. Transportation to the prison is very important as well. If you don't come to prison on time, you could get another charge or you could be sent to the hole for a long period of time. When I went to Herlong Federal Prison Camp, it was on the border of Nevada and California on the California side. And if you ever been there before, there's nothing but desert out there. I don't. There might be like 3 gas stations in that area. I mean, it seemed like it was so small. So the only way for me to get there was someone literally dropping me off. I also recommend any sort of books or courses you want to study at prison camp. Get that lined up in the 6 week period so that you can send that into prison when you're ready to get there. You want to spend as much time as you can saying goodbye to everyone, especially considering that you're going to be gone for a while. Your relationships are going to change, and there's always that possibility that you may never see these people ever again. Any sort of medical work you need done, whether dentistry or surgeries, get that done before you go in because medical at prison camp is very impersonal. And when I was trying to get my teeth done, I felt very, I didn't even feel like a human being sometimes. So, and mind you, that was camp, and that's nothing compared to what most people go through at other prisons. So, and you may have to wait a very long time before you get your surgeries or your medical attention if the prison feels that it's not an emergency because there's a lot of paperwork and red tape that has to be done before an inmate goes to a hospital, even for the smallest of things. So just to make your life easier, get that done before you come to prison. You also want to set up your post prison jobs if at all possible. So if you know you're working for a great job now, try to get that job when you come back. Work a deal out with the employer to where you can come back. That will save you so much time and headache. Also, if you feel like you want to change careers, perhaps you start talking to those people in the new career you want to go to so that you have that lined up for when you come home from prison. This may also decide what kind of books and courses you may want to take while you're in prison. I also find it necessary to get yourself ready religiously and spiritually. Now, if you're an atheist, this does not apply to you. However, I found that doing yoga and praying more and doing more meditation during my pre-trial and during my self-surrender time was extremely helpful in keeping my mind at ease and focused as much as possible, that is. I told a lot of my friends that if you are a Christian and you pray 1 time a day, you need to start praying 3 times a day. And if you're a Muslim, praying 5 times a day, consider 6 or 7 times a day. I also find it helpful to write a letter to myself. This letter basically reminds me of who I am, what I'm trying to do. And I found that that letter prevented me from feeling like a caged animal. It helped minimize the caged animal feeling. And it reminded me of the motivation that I wanted to have when I came into prison. And it kind of reinvigorated me while I was there. So now I can use prison the way I wanted to use prison instead of prison using me the way it wants to use me. Lastly, I suggest that you only bring clothes you do not need and only bring your ID card. I find that having to mail all these things home could be a pain in the butt. If I had to do it all over again, and hope I never do, but if I had to do it all over again, I would have bought clothes that I don't need and just let the CEO throw the clothes away. Now, what to expect when you turn yourself in? You will be strip searched. So when you come in to prison, they're going to tell you to take off all your civilian clothes. This is when they'll mail all your clothes home. And this is why I recommend just bring clothes you can throw away. Once you get stripped, after that, they will tell you to turn around and spread your cheeks. They may or may not examine your butthole. And if they find any sort of drugs or any sort of contrabands, you will get hit with an additional charge. After the strip search, you would be giving your prison clothes and everything from there. I need to make sure you understand, please do not bring your cell phone at this time. A cell phone in prison is a 100 series shot, which is one of the more severe shots in prison camp. And you can also get with a $75 charge or fee, and you can get sent to the hole. Depending on the CEO or the lieutenant at the time who issues you additional punishment, you can get sent to a low. And if you do get sent to a low, you would not be eligible to return to a prison camp, no matter how good, no matter how low your points are. Also, the nurses are going to check to see if you have any injuries, and they're going to document this. They're going to make sure that you don't have any. It's actually for the future. So in case you get any sort of scars, the prison can say, well, that was already there. Or they can say it wasn't already there, and they can kind of dictate when you had these scars. You're not allowed to scar yourself in prison, by the way. It is a disciplinary action. Also, any sort of tattoos, if it's not documented at this time, they you can get a shot if it turns out you got a tattoo later in your prison sentence. And also, they want to make sure that you get the best bid possible or any sort of accommodations that you may need while you're in prison. This is also when you will get your prison ID. And while you're going through this process, you will be sitting in holding cells and waiting a very long time. And by the way, I forgot to mention, while you're at this in this area, it is called the processing and receiving area. It is the first or the second thing you'll see when you go into prison camp. Now, when you finally enter camp, you're done with processing and receiving. You must understand, not a lot goes on in camp. And so one little thing new that happens stands out big time. So you walking into prison camp, you're going to stand out. A lot of inmates are going to look at you. A lot of inmates are going to may come up at you questions. Don't take any of this personal. Just go right to the CO. From there, the CO at the camp will give you a very undesirable bid. The first bid I got was on a place called the Freeway. The freeway is basically right in the middle of all the busy walkways and intersections at prison. I've seen a lot of inmates get sent next to the bathrooms, which is clearly very undesirable. Okay, but that's only for a few days, a few weeks. At some point, the camp administrator or the camp counselor will give you a more desirable bid. And keep in mind, the bids at prison camp are terrible. Inmates of your race will come and greet you. So what they're going to do is they're going to give you hygiene. They're going to give you some snacks, probably give you some more comfortable clothes, and then kind of sit back and kind of get to know you. Now, some of the ones that seem to be desperate to be your friend, be cautious of those. The people who seem to sit back and watch you, I would trust those people more because they don't come off as needy and they most likely been around prison for a while, so they got a nice routine going. But in any case, trust your instincts when it comes to these things. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it unless you feel like you absolutely have to. Now, keep in mind when you do get to prison camp, you're going to feel like a caged animal. There are no fences. You can walk around fairly freely, but you're not allowed to go home. And because you don't want to have your loved ones in trouble and you don't want to cause any additional grief with your loved ones, you're going to feel like you can't leave camp. And that's going to make you feel stuck. The best way to get over that, my next point, is to write that letter to yourself. And when you receive it, you're going to feel a hell of a lot better, a lot like I did. Now, it's going to be a while before you're able to get your emails and your telephone access. So you want to write a letter to your family and loved ones to let them know that you're okay. They'll get that mail hopefully in about 2 or 3 days. I also recommend that you get some rest, or read a book, whatever you can do to relax your mind. This is a pretty eventful day, arguably traumatic day. You want to try to process as much as you can and get your energy level up so that you can get through the rest of this sentence. If at all possible, start your routine then. Maybe ask a few inmates on what you can and can't do. And also consider what you want to do while you're here. What I did the first day I was there was I started mapping out a lot of writing projects I wanted to do as far as novels to write in the future. Okay. And also keep in mind, you are not going to see any camp counselor, camp administrator until probably 3 days later, possibly even the next week. Now, your prison camp routine, what that will consist of is your job assignment, your spiritual practices, your exercise routine, count times, cleaning your cell or square, meals, your leisure time, your focus on your post-prison life. Now, and also during your first few weeks, you're going to be full. It's going to be full of meetings and finding a job and trying to figure out how to kind of maneuver through the politics and figure out who you can and can't hang out with. Of this list, the most important, thing you want to think about is the count time. When it comes to count time, this is when all the inmates stand at their bunks or in their cells, and the CO walks up and down to count all the inmates. If you are missing during this count time, you can be sent to the hole. It is a possibility that you can be sent to the low security prison. Count time is usually 3 times a day. Sometimes it's hourly. Sometimes they have out counts or different a different kind of special counts, which I mentioned in my book, Subprime Felon Inside a Federal Prison Camp. So you want to make sure that you understand those counts and that you are there during those counts. The next important thing on this list is your job assignment. Do not miss your job assignment because that could be considered that you ran away or it could be considered an escape, and that could also be disciplinary action. Okay, if you get a chance to go get a good job at federal prison camp that works around your schedule and gives you what you need to get through prison, you want to make sure you hold on to that as much as you possibly can. Okay. I also suggest you make sure that your spiritual practices are also important because that's going to keep you grounded and it's going to keep you motivated to get through prison. Also, your focusing on your post prison life is also important because that's going to give you the drive to keep going and it's going to give you something to look forward to. Okay. Now, the first few weeks, you're looking for a job and you'll be full of meetings. So it's a little hard to fine tune that routine. But once all of that is done and your routine gets in full swing, you'll notice that the time goes by a lot faster. You're a little more focused and driven. And you'll notice that a lot of drama and politics don't seem to affect you because you're too busy. Also, during that first week, you're going to get access to your communication. Now, true links and core links, depending on which side you're on, you're going to get that once your camp counselor gives you that. And during that same time, you should get access to your telephones. Telephones are 15 minutes and they cut off right at the 15-minute mark. Usually, no collect calls can be made at a federal prison camp. Now, when it comes to true links or core links, on the inmate side, you have true links. On the loved one side, your friends and family side, you have core links. This is how you communicate via email. The inmate logs in. He pays 5 cents a minute to be in that program, in using that software. He types up his email. He hits send. It goes to a server where they're reading the email to make sure that there's nothing incriminating. And then once the email is okay, it goes to your loved ones via core links. This process takes about 2 hours. From the core link side, your loved ones respond to the email. It goes to a server to make sure there's nothing incriminating. And then it gets sent to the inmate. Again, it takes about 2 hours. So expect about a 4-hour turnaround time when you're sending emails to your loved ones. When it comes to your mail, I've gotten mail literally the same day I was at prison camp. I mailed everything I needed a day or two before I went to prison, and I got everything I wanted within 1 or 2 days of me being at prison camp. The letter, coincidentally, that I wrote to myself came the same day I went to prison camp. So that was it really was super helpful for me. And keep in mind, the COs do not read your mail at prison camp. That's a major typo. I'm going to change that. But the COs do not read your mail at prison camp. At the low and higher institutions, they will read your mail. When it comes to visits, they must be approved by the camp counselor. So your loved ones must fill out the form completely. Be sure you include your ID. Your loved ones include their ID and all the information that is needed for that form. If it's incomplete, it will be thrown out. Mail it to the right address. If you mail it to the wrong address, the inmate the camp counselor will not see it at all. Okay, and also keep in mind that if the women in your family are arguably attractive, very curvy bodies, maybe very heavy set, you want to make sure that they are wearing something that's clearly doesn't highlight these areas of their body. If the CO believes that is that your female friend or loved one is coming and she's sexually subjective, she will be sent back to her car and forced to change, and she couldn't come back until the CO says it's okay. There's especially if it's like a count time, she may have to wait a few minutes, a few hours. So please keep that in mind. I've heard stories that 12-year-old girls were sent back to their car because they were arguably sexually subjective. So please keep that in mind. Now, outside of the mail, any of these things could take a week to 2 weeks to set up. The email and phones took about 3 or 4 days, if I remember correctly. Um, so keep that in mind, which is why I say it's so important for you to write that letter when you first get there to your loved ones. Now, here is a way for you to reduce your prison sentence as much as possible. You have RDAP. And what RDAP is, it is the Residential Drug Abuse Program, and it's an intensive 6-month program, 500-hour substance abuse rehabilitation program, and it's ran by the BOP. These are for people who've had drug or substance abuse problems. So essentially what happens is you go there, you finish your time, and you can get, I've heard, as much as a year off your sentence. Okay, so you want to make sure you go there, fill out the information, answer all the questions the counselor may have so that you can take advantage of that. The other thing you would consider is Rule 35. This is becoming an informant for the government. If you think that you know somebody um, who got in trouble in your case and you got some information that can benefit the government in getting a conviction, the government will work with you and you can negotiate how to get your sentence reduced as much as humanly possible. Okay? But I will say that if you go to camp or any sort of prison and you're considering using Rule 35, I suggest you keep that as quiet as humanly possible. Um, a lot of inmates may a lot of inmates may look at you differently. They may consider you a snitch for this, and this could really hurt your relationships in prison camp. Lastly, my sentence was reduced by 10 months because my public defender sent in a request to the federal prosecution explaining to them that not only was I naive about what I've done, but I did a lot for my community. I was in school, a full-time student, and I had cooperated with the government from day one. Because of this, the federal prosecution recommended to the judge to reduce my sentence from 27 months to 17 months. The judge was okay with that.